What's up everybody, David here, and today we're going to be checking out the brand new modern and massive drum library from Getgood drums. This is Getgood drums' second drum library. The first one was the Matt Halpern signature kit as well as the Periphery 3 samples, and that was amazing, but it seems like they've raised the bar in every way this time around. In modern and massive you get 6 kick drums, 6 sets of toms, 9 snares, and 10 cymbals, so there's definitely a lot more drums this time around. So let's not waste any more time, let's check it out. Alright guys, so now we're going to check out all of the drums that come with modern and massive. Let's do it. There is a lot more options as far as drum sounds in modern and massive compared to the first Getgood drums Matt Halpern kit. But what we're going to do now is go into the DAW and just check out the GUI, check out how everything works, and see what's new inside of modern and massive. Alright, so this is the first thing you're going to see when you open up modern and massive. This is really just your standard drum overview. You can audition each drum and cymbal, and you can also change the drum pieces straight from this screen. So what's cool is when you're changing these pieces, they have little audition buttons on the right, so you could just see which one you like best, change it, and you're good to go. On the left you have a global master and reverb fader, but other than that, that's pretty much it. Next you have all the faders and options for each individual kit piece. Now each piece is going to have pretty much the exact same layout. You're just working with different faders and different sounds. So on the left it's always going to show you what piece you're working on, and you can also change the kit piece from here as well. On the top you have your EQ and your panning, which is just a high pass and a low pass filter, and then your panning. You have mute, solo, invert, phase, and then all of your different faders, which we'll get to in a second. On the right you have the high pass and low pass once again. You have a reverb knob, and then you also have this turbo knob. I'm not sure exactly what this is doing, but it's basically just their own post-processing that you can blend with the original signal. As far as the faders on the kick, you have the kick sum, which is basically your whole kick sound. You have a sub for the kick. You have overhead large diaphragm condenser, overhead small diaphragm condenser, room mono, close, and far. Now, like I said, all of this is going to be basically the same no matter what drum you're working on. If we go to the snare, you still have your EQ, your panning, except you have a top mic, a bottom mic, same overhead condensers. Toms, each tom mic, same overhead condensers, same room. Everything is pretty much exactly the same. This interface stays the same no matter what drum you're working on. Now let's go back and see how some of this stuff sounds. So one thing to keep in mind is that this little channel strip on the side is for each individual channel. So if I turn up the turbo on the kick sum, if I go to the sub, the turbo is not on. So you have a lot of different controls for each individual channel of that drum piece, which is pretty cool. So let's go ahead and check out some turbo and reverb on this kick. That sounds pretty sick. Let's see what it does to the snare. So as you can see, dialing in your drum sound is actually really easy here. So one more thing I want to talk about before we move on is they've actually added bleed into the snare, which is really, really cool. So if we solo the snare, you're actually going to hear bleed from the kick, the cymbals, and the toms. So you can actually dial in and customize the amount of bleed as well. So on the bottom right, you have this bleed button, and then you're actually given faders for everything that's going to be included in the bleed. Let's check those out. That actually sounds pretty dope. That is awesome. Now let's move on to the settings. So in the settings, you can control how much of your cymbals are included in the overhead and room tracks. You have your mapping control. There are a bunch of presets here, but you can of course customize and save and then load your own presets as well. This is really cool at the bottom. It looks like they've incorporated a Learn MIDI controller down here. So if you're trying to program your electronic drums to Getgood drums, let's say you're trying to program the snare, you would just hit Learn, hit the snare on your electronic drums, and it would automatically program it by itself. So that is really cool. On the right, you have your velocity curve, which you can modify globally or for each drum on its own. And then you also have the snare bleed at the bottom as well. Next, we have the groove player, which is a bunch of built-in grooves that you can then drag into your DAW, which is really cool. And that's actually pretty much it, guys. Everything in this user interface is really self-explanatory. They've done a really, really good job at streamlining this and making it incredibly user-friendly. And it looks cool, which is always a plus, so that's pretty dope. Alright guys, I gotta say, I am really stoked on Modern and Massive. I think it is a huge step forward over the Matt Halpern kit. Not that the Matt Halpern kit was bad in any way, but they've just done so much here, and it's definitely apparent how hard they worked. First and foremost, of course, we're getting more samples, which is always good. It's always great to have more drum sounds to choose from. Second is I really liked the turbo and the reverb actually. From what I've seen on the forums and stuff, the samples as they come out of the box without the turbo are very lightly processed, but the turbo just adds that little extra bit. It's not overdoing it, it's not overkill, it's just enough, and it's just what it needs. So I really enjoy the turbo setting, and they just did a really good job with that. And then we have the new user interface, which is just crazy simple and super easy to use. It looks awesome. It's a little too much white for me sometimes, but I'm not going to be nitpicky. And one of the best things about Getgood drums, modern and massive, is that you do not need the full contact. You can use this in the free contact player. That is awesome. Hats off to the guys at Getgood drums, because I don't have contact and I'm not trying to buy contact. I want to go as long as I can without spending $400 on contact. I'm sure it'll happen eventually, but not now. I'm not ready. Now, I almost forgot to mention, there's a few things that I found to be, well, not so good. First of which is the routing. Routing the multi-out Getgood drums into Studio One kind of turned out to be a little bit of a task. Every time I tried to route a mono mic into a mono output of contact, something like the kick drum mics or any of the close mics really, they would come out panned hard left or hard right. I actually ended up having to route everything to a stereo track and then consolidate it later inside of Studio One. Now this very well could be a contact issue or Studio One issue, but I was actually not the only one that this was happening to, so something might be up there. Second thing is I was having an issue with the snare drum when programming notes that were close together, something like 16th notes for example. I was having an issue where the sustain of the note was actually being cut off before the next hit kicked in. But I should note that Matt Halpern has addressed this specific issue and said it will be fixed within about a week or so. Third thing was inconsistencies in the velocities. So basically what was happening is certain velocities sounded very different on different snare drums, if that makes sense. I was programming the snare roll at the beginning of that track where the hardest hit is maybe 100 and then the lowest hit is maybe 40, I think. And I would try that out between different snare drums, and on most snares it sounded exactly like what you heard in the song. But on some of them, the low notes, the soft notes, were barely even audible. I would actually have to go back and modify the velocity just to make it sound like the other snares did. So I guess the problem is that 40 velocity on one snare sounded completely different on the other snare. One would be audible and one sounded like nothing was even playing. So they were just kind of inconsistent when you went between different drums and tried to use the same velocity. Now I should point out that all the stuff I just mentioned is very fixable in an update. Like I said, Matt Halpern addressed the sustain issue, that's going to get updated, but all of this are simple problems. I'm sure that most of them, or if not all of them, will be fixed in an update. I totally understand that this is the first release. A lot of the time when you release software like this, it is never truly tested until it's in the consumer's hands, until you have those variables, different systems, different softwares, then the bugs come out, then you know what you need to fix, and that's totally understandable. That's totally normal. So I don't really think that any of these should stop you from buying it, but you should know that there are a couple issues. I did, however, notice there's a little bit less articulation in the cymbals, but that's nothing that would deter me from buying it. Overall, I'm really stoked on Modern and Massive. I think it sounds great. It's very modern, and then it's also like very massive at the same time. Modern and Massive comes out this week, I believe, for $119, and I think it is totally worth it, and I think that you guys should definitely check it out. On that note, guys, let me know what you thought about Modern and Massive. Do you like it? Do you love it? Do you absolutely hate it? Whatever it is, let me know down in the comments. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. There's new videos every single week, and you don't want to miss any content. Thank you so much for watching, guys. My name is David, and I will see you next time.